Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of Asura's Bride. And today I'm here with Patty and Peg and Darla. So if y'all could say hi and introduce yourselves, even though you've all been on the podcast before, you can still say something about yourselves.
I guess I'll go ahead and go. My name's Patty. I am a huge Asura's Bride fan, huge Midnight Poppyland fan, been on a podcast before. So when Mindy talked about having this podcast, I was super excited. So this was my first manga that I ever read. So I'm really excited to talk about it.
And we all know you're obsessed with a certain person in this comic.
Yes, Ulaan is mine. Y'all stay away.
Oh, I know that, Patty. I already know.
They both know my level of obsession. It's unhealthy.
Darla, would you like to say hi?
Hi, yeah. So, you guys probably know me by Darla. So, like most of you guys know that I'm super thirsty when it comes to like Midnight Poppyland, Tora, of course, Basic Dream Guy, 100%. But because of my obsession with MCL, it dragged me to read Asura's Bride, and I just like completely fell in love with Lily's style after reading AB, because my love in art has always been Asian traditional, and that's just the aesthetic that I love. It's the most beautiful manga I've ever read, and so I just love it. And of course, Ulaan is so amazingly beautiful. I will not claim him as mine because I know that he's Patty's, but like I don't mind being like his concubine, you know, like on the side. But you know, Tora forever though. Like he's my number one. He's my main. So, but AD all the way.
It's okay, Darla. I can give you a day for on the side.
Very generous.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Peg, and I'm a big fan, obviously, and to me, both of the comics are on a par. I'm in love with Lily Dusk's storytelling skills, the way her characters, her characterizations, her dialogue, her panels, her transitions, her art, everything. And so it's just a feast of storytelling in both comics. And this one is particularly interesting. And I do hope that it gets further into it. And my own investment in Asura's Bride is from a fanfic I wrote that I had to really get into it on every level in order to go there. And so that's it really deepened my love for this comic.
Oh, and here I must express extreme regret that I haven't read it yet, but I will.
Oh,
And
Mindy,
I'll link it
is a thing of beauty. Trust me, you will love it.
I'm sure. I've read everything else that 𝗪𝗂 Tuggles has written, so yes.
Can we just get into let's do this.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Let me love you, Peg. Let me love you.
Yeah, I'm sure it is both very emotional and erotic.
It's good stuff. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Okay, so we start out with more of like that amazing artwork, which that's also the first thing I noticed. I was like, wow, this art is amazing. You know, the mist in the mountains, it's a very muted, you know, color tone, which we've talked about, and it kind of sets this whole ethereal setting to the story where it seems like it's very much in its own world. Wait. So Yuwa says, what do you want with me? Is this an abduction for gold? I'll give you double. And you know, he's riding on the horse, Ulaan's riding on the horse, and he says, it is not, you're doing okay, girl. And she's behind him, her hands are bound, and doesn't look like a very equitable situation here.
No, well, and it cracks me up that Yuwa's like, I'm going to negotiate anyway, even though in this situation, I don't have the upper hand.
Yeah,
and I think
he's determined.
And I think it was really funny because he's talking. Oh, Were you talking, Peg?
Yeah, I was trying to get your attention before you hopped off that first panel.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
We can
Go
back
ahead,
up.
first panel. Sorry.
I know you're like, oh, look at this. It's like a forest in the mist, and it's. I don't know much about Japanese and Chinese art, but I've been learning. Like everything I know fits into like 2 sentences. I don't know much of anything, but I have been studying Japanese woodblock prints and also sumi painting style, the monochrome painting style, and my kids have been learning it too. And one of the things they talk about is the use of white space and blank space in that style, and that the blank space becomes another character in the composition. And I noticed in Asura's Bride, when I was looking at it last couple of days, episodes, I think is it 2, 3, and 4, or 3, 4, and 3, this is the 3rd one, even though it says 4. So 2, 3, and 4. Each starts with a panel like this that uses a lot of white space and then a nature element in there. And it really reminded me and evoked that. I think this episode is called Into the Mist, and it really evoked for me that use of blank space in this comic is really compelling and meaningful, and echoes these older and contemporary art styles. So I just wanted to appreciate that before getting to the horsey.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Thank you. I'm happy that you did, and that you know more about the art style and can give us that information.
Yeah, and kind of jumping on what you were saying, Peg, it kind of gives it that, I know that Ulaan and Yuwa just got through a really big ordeal with like dealing with bandits and whatnot, and like it just gives this kind of calm and quiet to the scene while they're talking. Like I'm kind of hearing in my head like the crunch of the horse's feet on the snow, but there's not a whole lot of other sounds going on around them while they're talking. So that's a really great thing to point out. Oh, what's that, Peg?
An example of a woodblock print I just acquired. It's by Imoto Takiho, and it's in the style Nanga style, which Nanga means southern, or like the Chinese style. And you can see the monochrome, but also using elements of nature in an ideal style rather than realism. And this reminds me, this style reminds me first, of these initial panels for these 3 episodes, and also the dream sequence in Midnight Poppyland. That same receding into the mist, that same sense of stillness and dream. So it's just deep. I love it.
That's really cool.
Right, and even in this panel, it's fun because I don't notice so much until you start looking at it. It's kind of things that you absorb unconsciously, but now looking at it again, you see like the trees are like receding in the background, like you can't see the ones there, and then you kind of see snow falling, and there's light filtering through the trees. So it's all things that you don't really notice, but now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, it's just really beautiful.
For sure.
And it's cold because the horse is going burr.
Yeah, it's bad if the horse is not happy with the temperature.
and poor Yuwa is in this like thin robe.
Yeah, and he's asking like, "Girl, are you doing okay, girl?" He's talking to his horse.
I was wondering. Okay, that's not a good start, Ulaan.
When I read this, and I don't know what was in Lily's mind and what's actually going on here, but to me, the horse wasn't going, brr, it's cold. It was doing that horse noise.
Yeah.
You're probably right about that.
Peg, you're the one who has horses. You should know. We're the city people. We don't know from horses.
Funny. Who knows? Maybe the horse is like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why are you dragging her behind you? She should be up here with us. Come on now.
He knows how to treat a lady. So Yuwa is not very polite and deferential because she tells him, you must be an idiot if you're planning to ride back through the wilderness on your own. And he looks a little annoyed at her statement. He's got his forehead, his eyebrows furrowed, and he says, you're coming back with me to camp where someone will take care of you. Okay, so he's not planning on abandoning her completely.
Well, that's interesting because I thought it was Ulaan that said you must be an idiot if you're planning to ride back through the wilderness on your own. But I could be wrong. What do you guys think?
So I definitely think that's her like that aiming towards Yuwa, because
Oh,
she
okay.
will not survive on her own through that wilderness.
Okay.
Yeah,
I hear that too.
She would be SOL out in that weather.
Yeah. Although, you know what's funny, I have to say, his armor is, you know, very nice and it's bundled up and it's keeping him warm. Then there's this like giant gap on his chest, and I'm just saying, like, it's not very warm to have that open. It might be very pretty, but it's not very warm.
I think that was fan service. I'm not complaining.
It's like
we
how
gotta
like,
see the
all
tattoo.
yeah, magnificent.
I kind of, my impression was that dialogue in the middle was him speaking, but I just like this next panel. It looks like his size, his bulk, his solidity, the darkness of his armor. You know, I mean, he fills the frame and overfills the frame. And then in the hair, you always have that movement of nature. And then the snow's kind of coming around him. So it's like he's in his element in the woods out there, as opposed to her and her flimsy silk falling all over the place. She's out of her element. It's just gorgeously.
That's a great point. You know, and I have to wonder, like, what was Ulaan thinking in terms of, like, obviously he knows that she's a princess of Shan at this point, but I almost want to know what he's thinking in his head. Like, okay, I'm going to take you back to my camp. Like, where was his head going with this? Did she, like, first of all, I mean, obviously we know that Ulaan is a gentleman, but at the same time, I have to wonder, like, what were your plans? Were you going to negotiate her capture? Like, what's going on here? And I think we learn later on in the episode that Yuwa is thinking the same thing. Like, I got to play my cards right here, or he could, you know, go crazy on me at any point. But like the way that he says, you know, I'm taking you back to camp where someone will take care of you. So he's already kind of putting it out there, like, I'm not going to harm you, but I'm not going to guarantee what's going to happen.
No, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the big differences between MPL once when it went to original and this one is that Lily didn't have a team of people working on this, right? This was like all her. The coloring, the painting, the backgrounds, everything is her, right? And
yeah. Oh,
to me,
I think so. Yeah.
So it's, I mean, it's revealing. It just says, you know how you read something and you can tell things about the author. You can kind of tell things about the creator looking at this, since it is not. This is 100% Lily, like the details of the armor, like her eye for detail, where there's little scuffs, like he's used this armor. I mean, a little tiny bit of blood that's on his collar. I mean, the details are crazy. And so you can kind of see her, the level of attention in every detail that she has in there. You know, even the shading of the folds of the cloth of his jacket are not uniform. Each one is different. It's beyond exquisite, and it's masterful.
Oh, it's so nice that you notice these things. I love it. Like, you have a really good eye for visual detail.
Sorry, I'm just staring at this panel in a
it's hard not to stare at it. I mean, my God. And sorry, you guys are gonna have to, I'm going to Darla level thirst here. I don't know how intellectual I'm gonna be today. You're gonna have to bear with me.
Okay, so Yuwa now asks, she's like, well, why did you tie me up? Am I your prisoner now? Damn it. And, you know, she again does not look very happy. We don't see her face, but her mouth is in a very open, unhappy pose.
Yeah, she's not a happy camper.
Yeah, she thinks to herself, I tried to hide it, but he found out that I'm a princess of the Shan kingdom anyway. I don't know if he's going to use my identity against me or our kingdom. And which again is very, like, Yuwa is the person who like surrendered herself and who signed up to save her kingdom. So she's thinking about her kingdom. You know, she's someone who's
Right.
loyal to her kingdom. And she says, but right now it seems like it's my only option. And, you know, that panel, again, besides for the fact that her shoulders are exposed and she's freezing, she's very determined and smart. And she wants to be strategic about, like what you said before, about her actions. And we do learn, you know, she did try to get help. She says, I've screamed myself hoarse, but nobody else is out here. And he's right. Oh, you know, and now we see he's the one who said it. It's a one-day ride to Qianli or back home, and I don't know what dangers are looking out there. So yeah, it was Ulaan who said that.
Mindy. Oh, yeah, you didn't hear me before. I'm sorry, I'm gonna be a weirdo. But if you go back to the panel when she says, damn it, you can see their hair, the tendrils of their hair look like they're reaching out for each other. It's
That's so true.
So like in her composition, if you look for the lines, like sometimes the lines are leading forward towards each other, sometimes they're going away from each other. Here the hair is kind of like, I don't want to get over melodramatic or read something in that's not there, but it's like they're exploring, like a reaching, and it's and you feel that even though it's not said. Like so much of the storytelling is in the lines and in the composition, which is why I swoon over this comic.
Oh.
Anyways, okay, so you can jump ahead.
Oh, that's great.
Lily uses several times the same backgrounds from here to there, which is fine. It doesn't matter at all. I mean, like in the one, but it seems right now this is my only option. That same background is in another couple panels with the like a horse riding. But to me, in this episode, these backgrounds, the snow and the woods and the mist, are like the third character in this episode. They have its own role to play, and it's constantly there, like a presence.
You know, and I have to wonder, Peg, like when you say that, I wonder if, you know, it may be that that supernatural element piece that Lily likes to have in her comics, and like maybe this is the hand of fate. Like, you know, they could have come across any other band of soldiers, of anyone else, but it's just them in this space. So I have to wonder if that maybe that's not part of it. Like this is kind of a fateful meeting, much like that very first episode of Midnight Poppyland, where Tora and Poppy meet each other out in this open wooded space. Anybody think, anybody want to postulate that maybe it's the same wooded area just centuries later? Maybe?
Ooh, nice. Wait, now we have to look for like papers flying around, things that look like papers.
I picture a snowstorm and Moonbright, but who knows? It could be.
Who knows? Well, and there's a rock tripping moment that we're coming up on, and again, I'm thinking this is a parallel here, because Yuwa trips over a rock just after she says, like, you know, at least at least one person made it back home to inform father about the ambush, and then she trips over a rock, and it just reminded me of Poppy, her scooter tripping over that rock and flying all over the place. So I'm like, if I want to meet a man who is 6 foot something, very large, very tattooed, I need to go find me a rock to trip over. Please excuse me.
You heard it here first, okay? Romance advice 101. Don't sue Patty, please, if you get injured.
No, this is not medical advice.
Just scientific romantic advice.
Right.
Fail-proof.
I did also appreciate that she thought about Gigi, though, because, like, you know, in a situation like that, I would think it'd be really easy to be like, whatever, I just need to be safe. And then she's like, oh, wait, yeah, my handmaiden that came with me, you know, I hope she got back and that she was able to tell my father about the ambush. Because I think she's hoping that they'll come and get her. Not knowing what we know later. Oh, goodness.
Okay, so now, like, she trips over that rock, and she vocalizes, she's like, and, you know, she bashes her hand, her elbows, and, you know, she falls down, and we see this panel of zoomed in on Ulaan, you know, where at first he's not looking back, but then the next panel he does look back. and he has some concern in his eyes. You know, he's not a complete monster.
Yeah.
So,
And I think it's important that we get a moment like this because we know that he's, you know, a big macho guy who just came out of battle. I mean, for God's sakes, he's got blood all over his face. He's in armor, and you know, he could very well be a gruff asshole to her, and he's choosing not to be. And I think having these little moments after, you know, last episode where he got a little rough and tumble with her was his moment of showing the audience, like, I'm more than meets the eye. I'm more than what you see on the outside, which is, I think, a theme that Lily loves to do. So I love this, you know, like you were saying, this kind of look back. And I don't know if that was what she intended, but that's how I read it. And, you know, of course, I can't get over his red eyes. They're just so sweet there.
yeah, so he is concerned, and we see this because he steps off of his horse and comes to her. You see he's leaning down to her.
Yeah.
But you know, the way that he expresses his concern is still very gruff because he's like, get up.
Yeah.
Not like,
Yeah.
please lady, can I help you up? But no, it's like, get up, girl. And she is, again, looking defiant, which yay, A for Yuwa. I love defiant people. I hate when people boss me around. Anyway, which is why I already said I would never get along with people like Tora, Yuwa, or Ulaan, because nobody tells me what to do. But anyway, thank you.
Who knows? You may be the kind for them. They like feisty.
They'll have to do a lot to persuade me. That's all I'm saying.
But yeah, you're right. He's definitely pretty gruff with his language here. So like, even though he has that moment of tenderness and looking back at her, he's like, just get up. I'll untie you if you promise not to scream. And I'm not going to lie. I laughed my butt off at this because he's like, look at me. Look at me. No hitting, no screaming,
No biting.
No biting. None of that. So like I pictured him doing this, like with the two fingers, like, don't do that. I'm watching you. Oh God.
Yeah, he wants to help her, but he doesn't want to get hurt in the process either.
Yeah.
And I can imagine after 5 days of not sleeping, he's pretty tired and has zero patience. So I get that.
He's probably very over it.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm not one of the Ulaan thirsters, but he does look very beautiful in this panel.
Yeah, I dig it a lot.
Oh, did I tell you? My husband wanted to read this with me. I said, oh, I have to read Asuura's Bride in order to do the podcast, and he's like, oh, I'll read it with you because A, he wants to spend time with me because he's a sweetie pie, and B, I told him that it's like, I said, I don't know the time period, but I was like, maybe it's a medieval time period, and he's a fan of anything old, so and anything like I wouldn't say he's such an Asian file, but he likes to learn about different cultures, so he's like, okay, I'll read it with you. And then when he read this, he's like, Ulaan, like he's so feminine, he's such a pretty boy, you like that look? I'm like, everyone else does. He's like, oh, he's like feminine, his eyelashes and his mouth. Oh, okay. He's still gorgeous.
Mindy, my cousin said the same exact thing about him.
Yeah.
The same exact thing. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know why I like that. But I do, surprisingly, you know? I'm just so glad that your husband confirmed the same thing. That it's just odd, but it is what it is, sort of thing, you know.
Yep.
And don't they know that most men have long lashes? Like, I don't know if you've looked at it like women compared to men, but I have the stubbiest, blondest lashes ever. Like, I have to coat them in so much mascara to get them to look anything like Ulaan or Tora's, and it still doesn't cut it. Like, I want to know what mascara those boys are wearing. I need it in my life.
Yeah, it's quite beautiful.
Oh goodness. But yeah, then he goes into saying like, I don't want to hear you scream. I don't want you to hit me, but you can sing if you want. I hear you have a nice voice. You know, he's like, I've heard of your songbird reputation. So are you getting up or not? And he's just like, you know, giving her a chance, I guess. He's like, you're never going to outrun me, so don't even think about trying. And I've like, part of me was like, are you sure you want to say something like that to her? Because, you know, I think Yuwa would give him a run for his money.
Yeah, but
She might
also
try. She might try.
I like the fact that he recognizes that she is feisty and that she would try to run away.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Patty,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for you. If you go back to the rock tripping one and you scroll down and you see the one on the horse, you see his back, you see the back of his head, he turns around, you see his face, you see his foot, you see his elbow and his knee, you scroll down to the next panel, what's the impact on you? Like, do you
like that
anything?
he got off of his horse, he stopped, and that he leaned down.
Visual.
The visual?
Just in that panel, I'll untie you if you promise not to scream. If you look at it without the words, yeah, what's the impact on you?
I need to go be alone. That's the impact.
That's what I'm saying.
Or like,
yes.
I got so engrossed in the details.
Gives you pieces, little piece, little piece, little piece, and then you get the full. You get the feeling what Yuwa would feel laying on the ground, planted in the snow. She looks up, and here's this large, dark, solid male. There's right in front of you in full pan. You know the impact, the visual impact. You feel it. You feel her perspective, right? And it's perfect. It's perfect.
That's
it wouldn't
so
have
true.
that impact if you hadn't just gotten the foot, the elbow, the little bit of the back from far away. That's what gives it that impact, because you had the pieces and now boom, there he is.
Oh, I love that. I think you saw it, Peg. It's great whenever you say this stuff, because again, this is stuff that I can't really articulate that well. But yeah, as soon as you say it, I'm like, oh yes, that's what's happening. So like, you're an excellent visual reader.
And when your lady parts rev up, that's what's happening with Yuwa in the story. Yeah,
oh, she's probably very true.
In the flesh. She can smell him. She can hear the crunch and crinkle of that armor and that leather as it creaks and he kneels down, and the crunch in the snow as his foot comes towards her. Right?
Oh my God, Peg, you're killing me.
That's
so true, though.
I love.
Do you feel the body heat radiating off of him too, Patty?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe. Maybe.
Look at him.
I just want to thank you, Peg. You have just enhanced my visuals of this episode, and I will never look at it the same again in such a wonderful way. Thank you, ma'am.
But she will be looking at it again. That we do know.
Oh, that's all you need to know.
Yeah, that's all we need to say. Anyway, that's why this podcast is 18 plus. But anywho, she has this pretty disgusted look on her face. You know, angry, disgusted, repelled. You know, and she says she thinks to herself, "Eldest sister Yuzhen, that's who I told him I am. If it makes me more valuable, at least he'll keep me safe." So again, calculated, strategic. And she tells him, "Only if you tell me your name. I will not travel with someone whose name I don't even know." So I like the fact that even though he's been bossing her around now and she knows she doesn't have much power, she still has to somehow assert her will, because it's humiliating to have, you know, be completely out of control. And she doesn't like that, as most people do. So she does something, even if it's a little thing, to try to get some sense of equality.
That is so true. Because she, you know, again, we've talked about how she doesn't have the upper hand in this situation. And she's doing like just little things right, you know, here and there where she notices, and I think she sees this, where when she, you know, shoots back at him, like it disarms him a little bit. Like he's not expecting it. Because, I mean, we know, well, we don't know at this point, but, you know, for those of you who've read it, I mean, he's a king. So she doesn't know this. And so she's just mouthing off to him like he's any soldier. And I think it disarms him quite a bit. Like he's not expecting it. He's, you know, I think also his manly bits are going a little crazy right now. Because, I mean, look at her. She's leaning over. She's in a very beautiful dress. I mean, come on. Like, you can't tell me that he isn't, like, completely starstruck by her. But I think, you know, it's her demeanor, because I mean, he could have any beautiful woman he wanted, but you know, when he looks at Yuwa, I think it's very similar to the way that Darla looks at Poppy, in that, you know, she's feisty, she's got an attitude, she's got a personality, and she's not just gonna, you know, take this lying down, even though she's sitting there on her hands and knees in the goddamn snow. So,
Yeah, good for her. And now she goes beyond hands and knees, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
He says, I'm going to drag you along the mud if you don't get up, princess. And she just like falls flat on her face and it's like, then drag me. I don't care.
Yeah.
Very childish and like, whatever, you know, and this is, again, her way of asserting her independence and her personhood. You know, even if it hurts her, she'd rather have some power than listen to him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for him, it's not hard to, although I don't know, I think we find out later on why this one line that he gives, which is his name, Ulaan, has such an impact, because he doesn't give the nickname, which we know is King Asura. I think it's really important that he gives his true name here to her, and not just any old name. I mean, it's probably strategic. I mean, he doesn't want to give away who he is, but it's more personal.
Yeah, and that look that he gives her before, after she says, then drag me, I don't care, it looks like he has a little bit of a smile on his face. I think he appreciates her rebellion.
Well, what's happening, this is poker. He calls his bluff. He's like, I'm going to drag you in the mud. She's like, psh, he's not going to drag me in the mud. So she calls his bluff. And then he, you know, his bluff called, and then he has to keep going. And both of them are, we learn later, she was a pawn being moved on the board to get a reaction from him, a response from him by the advisor to the king, who like knew what would, you know, was playing the chemistry of the different personalities, apparently.
Yeah.
Smart. Yeah, we'll get to that when we do that, but yeah.
Oh yeah,
yeah, right. He does really enjoy that, because he's now nicer to her. He says, it's Ulaan at your service, and he extends his hand out to her, you know, for her to help her up. And she looks surprised at this. You know, she glances up, her eyes are wide. She seems surprised that he is so nice to her at this point.
Yeah.
So why do the backgrounds drop away here?
Yeah, right. So it's focused just on her face.
Because you're getting essentially micro expressions in the hands.
Yeah, so for that one.
Like even his hand startles and then reacts. Her hand, the motion that has, you know, there's like a little dialogue just in the hands. So the backgrounds drop out so you can see it with total focus. Story.
Yeah.
You gotta love
there's
the
a lot of
emotion
psychology
in the
there.
hands.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna say, you gotta love the emotion that is just in, you know, a couple sets of hands.
Right. So in the first one, you know, he says, come on, your highness, and he extends his hands out to her, and she looks like her hands are still bound, and she is extending them towards him. But then the next panel, she hesitates and looks like she brings it back a little bit, and that's when he has that shocked symbol on his hand. And then he doesn't take that hesitation. He just goes and grabs her. You know, he's not a person who's used to not getting his way, you know, and he's surprised by that. So he just does whatever he wants and grabs her hand forcefully.
Hands, you can see their expressions on their face from panel to panel, right? Just from So this is a whole nother level of, sometimes you have the story in the dialogue, and then sometimes you have the story in the images, right? The pictures. Here you have the story of the faces is now being told in your head. It's off the panel, but it's implied through their hands. So it's kind of these layers and levels of telling a story with the engagement of the reader.
Like I could completely see, Peg, where Yuwa would have like an open, maybe still a little shocked face, and then maybe she, you know, furrows her brows, or, you know, downturns them just a little bit when she hesitates. And then I could definitely see her with the surprised face when he grabs them. And I think like, yeah. So that's such a good point. I love that the backdrop just kind of fades away from that so that we can really absorb all of that. I do want to point out in this next panel, there's another parallel here, and I love to do this. He says, "I won't go slow this time. You best hold on tight." Does that remind anyone of a certain line?
Yes. Most women don't ask me to go slow. That one.
Exactly.
And he has that smirk on his face as well, which we recognize that smirk. Or as Quincy would say, that shit-eating grin.
Right.
Sorry, excuse my language.
No, you're fine. You're fine. He's got that little smirk on his face, like he's challenging her, like, I'm gonna egg you on just a little bit. Like, oh God. I need a minute. I would be like, you don't have to go slow.
Do we need to send a print of this to your husband and ask him to like tell him to imitate the smirk?
I would be in so much trouble if he did this. Oh God. Don't tell him.
Ulaan was really lucky she left the taser in that wagon.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Instead,
and the next panel we do see he is going fast, or his horse is going fast. His horse is cantering, galloping. Peg, you tell us.
That would be a canter.
Okay, how could you tell the difference between a canter and a gallop?
A gallop. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, feet would be higher up. So yeah, so they're cantering along, and she's in front of him. He's holding, his arms are kind of around her, which was, I don't know how she feels about that, but okay. And her robe's flying back, so clearly they're going at some pace. Oh
yeah, like, and you can see like her skirts are fluttering everywhere. So yeah, they are hopping right along.
And in the next panel, when we see that's closer, like there's those lines, like those motion lines. And she asks him, she says, "Ulaan, where are the rest of your troops? Why are you alone?" And he says, "Clever, your highness." And yeah, they are very close. His arms are definitely wrapped around her. And he says, "But I'm afraid I'm under royal orders not to reveal vital information to strangers. Let's try another topic." Which also does kind of remind me of Tora saying, "I can't tell you everything, but no, I'll tell you."
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of the Regina's Peak episodes, because she's poking just like Poppy did, like, "Hey, tell me more about this. Like, who's your boss's son?
Boss,
Quincy?" Right? Yeah. Like, who is that? And he's like, "Nope, that's off the table." And so I love the parallels between these conversations and these very, looking back on it, I'm like, oh my God, this is like a fateful meeting. This is it. This is so important.
I thought about emotion in these panels here, but I wanted to see, Darla, you're so quiet. Did you want to chime in on any of this?
I'm sorry. I just have a lot of distractions here, like a lot. Puppies fighting on things, and so.
Delicious bagels in front of you.
But don't worry, I'm keeping up too. I'm on this. I'm on this panel, right?
I just didn't know if you're having audio problems, so I wanted to make space for you in case we were talking over or whatever.
Yeah.
No. You guys have more interesting things to say than I do, anyways.
Not true,
right? But well, I'm just on that.
I'm just trying to respect my boundaries because Patty's here,
Right.
So I'm not going to go full.
Oh, come on, Darla. I will forgive you. Please go for it.
Your appreciation.
Say what you're
will
really
enhance her
thinking.
appreciation.
Tell us.
Hold on, I'm just fast forwarding a little bit.
Okay.
You didn't have to, I didn't want to put you.
Well, I think it's it's fine. Yeah, you can tell that they're super close. And like traveling. I love how Lily adds these super crazy motion lines because it's like,
Mhm.
you know, they're going through this like windy, snowy, fast-paced, like gallop or canter, whatever you say. But they're super close at the same time. Like they don't know each other, but they're at this super intimate, almost embrace pose. You know, but it's totally a foreshadowing of what's to come in the story. So it's just a beautiful panel.
Yeah, I was wanting to say something about those motion lines too, because my daughter's taking this class on illustration, and the book she's supposed to be reading, is about to read once the thing starts, is this Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, and the whole book is actually illustrated.
Nice.
But it went through the chapter on how to depict motion in comics, and it talked about, you know, in early days they just used lines, then they used like lines like it was echoing the movement, and then there was where the camera moved with the moving object and blurred the background. But then it talked about how in Japan there was a whole nother style called subjective motion that was being developed, where it puts the reader in the driver's seat in the perspective of the motion, and everything around is moving, but the object itself that is moving is still. And this is like the perfect illustration of that, because the moving object is these two, they're still, and everything around them is moving, and that's that particular style that developed in Japanese comics, and it's just gorgeous. Plus the fact that it looks like now their hair is kind of interweaving and as they're writing. And then that motion continues throughout the next couple of panels, that subjective motion, and it's just so beautiful. But I
that's
really
probably looking
understood
in his
it
face.
better. Yeah, I understood it better after I read that.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting because it's all different techniques of storytelling.
Maybe I'll borrow that.
What
So
kind of
now
fish
she
are
turns. What?
What kind of fish are on her dress? Is that what I think it is?
Yes, those are koi.
So she turns back to look at him in anger, and she tells him, "You tackled me and pushed me to the ground, scumbag. I can have your head for that. You owe me this information." Which is, again, her being tough on him.
Yeah, because again, she thinks she's talking to any old soldier. She doesn't know who she's talking to at all. I mean, I think she can gather that he's quite the warrior. I mean, look at the dude. He's like probably 6'10". But she's, you know, like you were saying, Mindy, she's trying to assert her power here. And again, I think, you know, because we look at this next panel and Ulaan is just like, I don't know, that's the face of a man who's enamored. What do y'all think?
Maybe. He's definitely laughing at her. I guess it's affectionately.
Yeah.
He finds her entertaining. I do think he does like the fact that she's so aggressive towards him.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, he's probably not used to dealing with that at all.
Oh, probably
especially not from women. You know, if women, you know, if that's a reflection of like the ancient Asia, I don't think women were quite very assertive at that point.
Yeah, that might not be the case. And you know,
I think he's used to that.
What's up, Darla?
I think he's used to that whole. I think I'm going to use Lily's term, like the whole Asian maiden type of woman that are just going to be like, yes, Your Highness, I will do whatever you want for you, and I will not stand up or, you know, argue with you with anything. So the fact that he's now come across this young, beautiful girl out in the snow that's not going to put up with his shit, like, I think that's a total turn on for him, you know? Like, it's completely different than what he's used to.
Yeah. And like, he takes a moment to really remind her of the danger that she could be in, because he's like, we're out in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness, and I could do more than just tackle you to the ground if I really wanted to. I owe you nothing.
Ooh.
And I was just like, with that look on his face, like, what are you suggesting, young man?
Yep.
Like it's a warning, although I think we know that he wouldn't actually do anything. And I think, again, with this look that we get from Yuwa, like, she's calculating, but like you were saying earlier, Peg, like, she's calling his bluff. She's poking at him, just like you were saying before.
Lily has this series here of almost 8 panels where it's just facial expression, facial expression, facial expression, facial expression, back and forth like a tennis match. And if you tune out those word bubbles, get rid of all the word bubbles and just scroll through them, looking at the hair, the action of the hair, how it's flowing around them, but also I don't want to say to term micro expressions, but the mastery of expressions in the story. It's just Lily's, she's got it down, man. The human face can make, I don't know how many millions of expressions, like it's infinite, but she's got it. So the story is proceeding in their faces, in their eyes, in those in the tiny little angle of their lips, in how the shape, how they're around their eyes, the muscles around their eyes and their eyebrow. It's crazy because it's endless. So that but her ability to portray the most subtle human expressions and tell the emotional story aside and in parallel to the words is, you can really see it in these 8 panels back and forth between the faces.
God, that's so true. It's such a facial sparring match. Like, if you look at it that way, like, they're daring each other, like, I'm gonna poke you just a little bit more. Oh yeah, well, I'm gonna say this, or I'm gonna do this. And you can tell, just like you were saying, like the back and the forth, they're both daring each other to go just a little bit further.
This little arc ends with him looking at the back of her head in that subjective motion. It's brilliant. Oh my gosh. There's so many ways that another creator would have not taken it to this height, to this level.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm just fangirling, sorry.
No, I think this is wonderful to think about. This is because it helps water the seeds of their story, because it's not just, oh, this is, I found this girl out in the snow and I'm going to do with her what I will, and I'm going to use her as a bargaining chip, because he could do that and then we would have no love story. But that's not what the story is about. The story is about these two people from vastly different worlds finding each other and finding that they make each other tick. And this is part of that ticking.
Yeah, and he clearly likes it, because he tells her, daring me, huh? Brave girl.
Yeah.
He appreciates that. He also has that very, that appraising look on his face, which shows appreciation. A little bit of a smile playing on his lips.
That's a top level, daring me. Yeah.
And then I like the fact that he next, he turns away and he doesn't look at her, because he's going to be honest now. It does remind me of Tora also, who sometimes doesn't look at Poppy when he tells her things that are hard for him to say. And here he's being honest and he's being vulnerable, because he tells her, look, I am effing exhausted and I just want to lie on the ground and sleep. If you're here to join me instead of getting back home, I would be delighted. So again, delighted in what way? Are you going to, sleeping or sleeping with her?
I think
he's being vulnerable. He's admitting that he's really tired.
Yeah, and I think it's the next episode that he says, just how long he's been up and what he's been up to, and I don't know how he hasn't fallen over the damn horse already.
I know, right? Maybe he's younger. When we were younger, remember, we were able to go through without sleeping.
This is true. I don't remember those days as much anymore. Oh gosh. But again, this little phrase right here, I hate to keep using the word disarm, but it softens Yuwa's outlook. She was very angry with him in the panel before, and she's like, well, I guess we're at a stalemate right now. This is kind of This is what I'm doing. And then so she's kind of thinking in her mind, you know, he doesn't seem to have harmful intentions. So she's read him correctly this entire time. You know, she sees the moments where he's softened. She's reading what he's doing because he could have been violent with her already. And she's like, but she knows she's treading on thin ice because he's wiped out, and you don't want to keep testing the patience of somebody who's wiped out, especially a warrior. And she's like, well, who knows when he'll snap and go mad on me. So she's like, oh, maybe I'll tune it down a little bit.
She does have like a good self-preservation instinct, so she wants to be feisty, but she also doesn't want to antagonize him too much.
Right.
And she says, if I want to get back home in one piece, I better pick my battles wisely.
I don't know. Y'all tell me what you think, but like this panel also has that like little moment of evoking some lady parts, because I'm like, man, I'm just like envisioning myself in Yuwa's spot, like all snuggled up on a horse like that. Like, part of me's like, is that sweating because you're nervous about what he's gonna do, or because you're enjoying this? I'm probably overreaching here, but
yeah, I don't think she's into him quite yet, but
not yet. Even though he's the thing of beauty, come on now.
She's not superficial like that, okay?
I know. She has depth, damn it.
So, you know, I love how she responds back, because she responds again as though he's the lowly soldier and she's the royal. She's like, you may carry on with your journey, you know, like as if I'm the one giving permission for him to do what he wants. But before that, I have lady matters to attend to. Take me somewhere convenient. And again, she's not asking him, please. She's kind of being, you know, commanding, just like he was commanding her. Take me somewhere convenient, you know, young boy. And he laughs, he smiles. He also finds that funny.
And instead of getting fussy with her, he's like, I'll just go do it. Like, that's fine.
Yeah, well, he puts it in the fact that like he was going to do it anyway, right? There's a river up north 2 miles from here. I need to get this muck off my face. So it's like, I'm going to do it. And like, you know, you can take care of yourself as well. So again, it's also like the back and forth where he doesn't want to capitulate to her demands and just make it seem as though he's just following what she wants to do. You know, he's like, I'll do what I want. And you can also take care of yourself there.
Right.
And then he's got to tease her. And he like, again, goes closer. He's like, promise. And she blushes and opens her eyes wide and is like, mortified. So here she may be thinking about it in that way because he raised it.
Yeah. So like, you can't tell me that she's a hot-blooded woman. You can't tell me that she isn't attracted to him. But I get what you're saying, Mindy, that like maybe she's not like into him right now. Because this just reminds me of some of the off-putting things that Tora says to Poppy, like the pervy comments, and then she gets all flustered and like, I'm picturing that moment where where Tora and Poppy are parked outside the grocery store, and Tora is asking her something like, oh, what was it? What did you think I was talking about? Dinner, definitely.
Like, what are you getting excited about?
Yeah, what did you
let's do it now.
And she's like, dinner, definitely dinner. And she's like hacking and coughing, and her face is like beet red. This just reminded me of that. And I'm like, technically another parallel, because they're, you know, Tora and Poppy are technically in a steel horse. And they're on their way. Similar. Yeah. I get a kick out of that. Like the banter back and forth is very similar between the two. And I love that he eggs her on with like these semi-pervy comments.
So do we have any final thoughts on this episode before we go on and do the bonus content?
Yeah, I have a question for you guys. I've been kind of scrolling back and forth. So in that last panel, when you look at his hair, picture that panel without his hair, without those strands. So what's the visual purpose, do you guys think, of that visual?
movement, show movement, to show that he's a wild
Because
thing. Can't be
if you
contained.
go back, there's only 2 panels that are without movement. The very first one is a moment of stillness, and then the one where he says his name, Ulaan. And the only thing that's around is the woods and the snow. Every other panel has the flow. What were you gonna say, Darla?
Well, I was gonna say, like, with you mentioning the motion lines, like with his hair and what does it mean? It obviously, when Lily draws his hair, it's going off in all these crazy directions in this last panel. So yes, not only is it creating movement and knowing that he's obviously on his horse, moving right behind Yuwa or whatever, but it also is showing that he's kind of that wild, I'm gonna just say like a wild stallion or something. And you know, it's hard for me to describe it right now, but he's just this wild man that's gonna say whatever the hell he wants to say, and he's not gonna let this little woman, demanding woman, get her way all the time. Like he's gonna tease her for it too, because she thinks that she's gonna get her way all the time.
It's just so interesting to me because both of their hair moves throughout, has those lines. Even when she's laying on the ground, there's these swooping motion lines in her hair, but they're different. It's almost like when you do animation and the motion lines of each character are different, and you can see their characterization in the lines. Like their hair is, like you said, expresses their characters individually, but in a parallel way. To me, it expresses what's going on inside them, but also expresses their connection. It's just another really beautiful level of telling us something about the characters outside of the words, and even outside of I guess it is part of the composition.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting that you compared it, Peg, to those panels where, you know, he's kind of offering to help her up and he's pausing and giving her name. Like that was one of the only moments of true stillness throughout this entire time, because the rest of the time, you know, while they're like, you know, sparring with each other back and forth, their hair's whipping around and doing stuff, and sure, I'm sure there's wind and whatnot, but you're absolutely right. There's so much emotion in that. And when we go back to the panels where, you know, sure, they're still kind of like batting back and forth at each other, but there's a stillness and a pause of, you know, we're face to face, we're looking at each other, and, you know, we're kind of seeing from each other's perspective at this point. And then they go right back into their banter and craziness. So I think this was a moment that was intentional.
Well said.
It's like when Lily's telling the story, it's not like, I've seen comics where you write a script and then you illustrate the script with pictures, and it's one story, the script and the pictures. Lily's like a braid with 7 strands. You've got the words, you've got the expressions, you've got the backgrounds, you've got how she's toying with what's in the reader's mind in those hands. Remember, the story is being told outside of the frame in the transitions. I mean, there's all these, and they contrast. They're not always telling the same thing. Sometimes the hair is telling you one story, whereas the face is telling you another story, and the words are telling you something else. And then sometimes they support each other. And that is the mark to me of like a master storyteller. So that's why I love both of these stories so much. Her narrative is so complex and gorgeous.
Yeah. Okay, so should we wrap this up and then we'll go to the bonus questions?
Bonus round, sure.
Bonus round, let's do this.
Okay.